another Quran study. God willing, today we'll be reading each other fancy words in order to deceive. Had your Lord willed, they would not have done it. You shall disregard them and their fabrications. This is to let the minds of those who do not believe in the hereafter listen to such fabrications and accept them, and thus expose their real convictions. So God tells us here in these verses that as a consequence of the decision that these people have made, which is to not believe in God's right, their own being, and so these are the human and jinn devils, and many of these jinn devils, God says, God has allowed them, to create these fabrications. And Hadith and Sunnah are these fabrications that we see that they have fabricated in order to deceive people. So Hadith and Sunnah, as we know, are like words and actions that they believe that are words and actions of Prophet Muhammad. However, these are lies attributed to Prophet Muhammad. Most of them are direct insult to him by his enemies, and it is really there to damage the religion and to repel the people from the path from Satan and his agents. So these human and jinn devils. So I mean, it's interesting to see here that this is not just something that was done by the humans alone. The jinns actually participate in this process by spreading this misguidance, I believe, to their other jinns, and um, you know the jinns that are part of the humans um, also promote that while they're alive to their human companions, and they inspire these fancy words, and so a lot of them are just pretty much just things that they invented. They came up with it and have nothing to do with reality whatsoever. Like, well, we have a litmus test in chemistry to see whether a certain chemical is an acid or a base, and you test whether it's an acid or a base. And the same way, a person's a believer or disbeliever in the hereafter. If you want to find out that the person truly believes in the hereafter or is just giving a lip service, there has to be some kind of a litmus test, and this serves as that test where the people who believe in the hereafter immediately recognize that it has been revealed from your Lord truthfully. You shall not harbor any doubt. The word of your Lord is complete in truth and justice. Nothing shall abrogate his words. He is the hearer, the omniscient. And then it says, if you obey the majority of people on earth, they will divert you from the path of God. They follow only conjecture. They only guess. Your Lord is fully aware of those who stray off his path, and is fully aware of those who are guided. You shall eat from that upon which the name of God has been pronounced, if you truly believe in his revelations. So actually, I will stop at 117, and so God is letting us know that the Quran is our only source of law, our only source of guidance here. Our only source of religious law is supposed to be the Quran, right? So we cannot accept any laws into our religion unless they're in the Quran, right? So when people talk about, innovations like circumcision, you can easily tell because God says this is the only book that is a source of law, and it is the only book that is fully detailed, right? So a fully detailed book will specifically mention all the laws that you have to uphold. So all the laws we have to uphold are in the Quran. There's not a single law that we have to uphold that is not in the Quran, right? This is, and then other about So this would just be a sort of a way for Satan to fool people, right, as he did, because you cannot say that yes, God tells us to follow Muhammad, so everything that I find that are lies that are attributed to Muhammad, automatically now have to follow them, right? That doesn't make any sense, and you can be rest assured that the same goes for Abraham or anyone else, right? Our book of law, our book of mention specifically, like having sexual intercourse during the nights of fasting. However, the Quran doesn't, you know, already established, right? But the Quran does tell you what those practices are, right? The Quran does tell you to observe the contact prayers, but nowhere in the Quran God tells you to do circumcision, right? Um, so that's what means when He says everything is fully detailed. You cannot follow any laws besides the laws that are in the Quran. So we already know how to do the contact prayers. So when God says do the contact prayers, that's it. The Quran mentions the contact prayers, and you do them, right? You know how to do them already, but you cannot say the same thing for any other innovation that you bring in and just say, well, God says follow Abraham or follow Muhammad, so I can do all these innovations, right? Hadith and Sunnah are satanic innovations, and they're there to expose people who are doubtful about the hereafter, who are offering lip service, who are who are following the religion, whether it's submission or submission or some other form of submission, like a Muslim submitter trying to follow quote unquote Islam. If these people are immediately exposed when they follow anything other than the Quran as their religious source of law, right? So we have to be very clear on this, that if you are looking at a law that you think is prohibited or not prohibited, I mean, you have to find that in the Quran, right? And on in contrast, actually, I want to mention that um, any evil. First of all, God has mentioned any sin that you do is prohibited, right? So, for example, people will say, "Oh, you guys are prohibiting circumcision, but it's not prohibited in the Quran. So why are you prohibiting it?" Right? I mean, I hear that time and time again from people, and it's really weird because it doesn't say anywhere in the Quran, for example, that you cannot chop a baby's hands or chop off their legs for no reason, right? But yet everybody understands that this is prohibited. Why? Because you're not supposed to aggress against anybody. You're not supposed to attack anyone. You're not supposed to inflict any kind of pain on anyone. You cannot go and cut off someone's nose for no reason and against their consent. So you cannot do those things, but no one says, well, it doesn't prohibit, so why are you prohibiting it, right? It's just a matter of common sense that you cannot aggress against a person, you cannot inflict any kind of permanent damage to a person against their will, and this is exactly that we understand that um, commandments that it thinks that other evil things can come from God. I mean that carries a similar weight, and if you think that God will order you to mutilate your children, that is a lie attributed to God, right? And God says we're more evil than those who attribute lies to God. So we have to be very careful, because God has purified the religion for us, and we have something that we are responsible to uphold. Many people have failed in the past. They were given uh, the religion, purified religion. Every time a messenger came, purified the religion, and then Satan came and started playing around with these people's heads and their egos, and history continues to repeat itself, and there's nothing stopping Satan that at this time, to allow it to not happen. Given though we have the Quran, and Quran is perfectly preserved, right? So he can't do anything with the Quran, but he can put other things around it and start to bring it into the religion. And so the moment you find Satan bringing stuff in that's not in the scripture, I mean, that should immediately raise a red flag for all of us. And it's interesting that um, this very important verse, verse 114, is in Surah 6. It's a multiple of 19. It's 19 times 6. And you can see other multiples of 19 in that surah which talk about the same subject. I mean, upholding the Quran alone, and not having other sources besides the Quran, not committing idol worship. Of course, if you uphold other sources besides Quran, you're also committing idol worship, right? And say, no, you shouldn't make a big deal of these things. No, you really have to. It's very critical for you to understand this concept, because you cannot be a submitter and and think that you can follow other things besides the Quran, or try to slip them inside the religion, um, in this way, and think nobody should say anything, and just um, make it like it's part of your religion. It's very serious, and I think we should continue to talk about it. Obviously, Satan doesn't want this to be talked about as much, because this is one of the things he tried to bring into the religion very openly, and very openly, uh, it allowed he allowed it to be accepted, he allowed it to be circulated, and it became part of the religion for a lot of people again, after God has purified it for us. And for the handful of us that are fortunate enough to recognize that, I mean, it is, I believe, our responsibility that we will continue to educate everybody else on this as well, who are people who are actually confused, or people who are not sure at this time and trying to find their way. So it's very important that we continue to discuss that as we come across these very, very important verses. I've seen that people who advocate these kind of innovations in their communities, if you closely observe, that they don't like to talk about the Quran alone, because they're scared that it seems almost to me that it kind of exposes the fallacies in their ideas that they promote. So they like you are forced. Indeed, many people mislead others with their personal opinions without knowledge. Your Lord is fully aware of the transgressors. You shall avoid obvious sins as well as hidden ones. Those who have earned sins will surely pay for their transgressions. Eat from Do not eat from that upon which the name of God has not been mentioned, for it is an abomination. The devils inspire their allies to argue with you. If you obey them, you will be idol worshippers. And then the footnote for it says, dietary prohibitions instituted by other than God, you will be idol worshippers. And then the footnote for it says, dietary prohibitions instituted by other than God, and they would not eat those things. They'll prohibit them. If let's say someone has some kind of religious holiday or something, and they say that they're making some food or something for a certain holiday or a certain saint, even though it's completely vegetarian, and it's like let's say it's made of rice or something, right? And there's no animal to be sacrificed. They think that it's dedicated to other than God, whereas the messenger of the covenant something to other than God, right? And so he talks about what it means. The dedication is killing an animal, and sending the soul back to God, you know, um, and that's what that is, right? And then also, um, uh, the footnote, it says that it represents idolatry if you try to prohibit anything that is instituted by other than God, right? So let's say a certain scholar or leader prohibited something, and then God didn't prohibit it. Then you have taken that certain person um, as a God beside God, because God did not tell you to do that. that, but you have another idol who has commanded you to do it, right? I mean, that will go for any commandment that did not come from God, it came from another person, and then you following that commandment, thinking it's from God, you have just set up an idol, right? So this is also something that we need to always remember and be cautious when people try to argue with us about things that are, their personal opinions. And God also tells us not to eat from anything upon which God's name is not mentioned, right? For that is an abomination. So this is talking about us when we eat something. We should remember God's name. We should mention God's name. The food, any food, or drink. And so we should say in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, preferably in Arabic because it's also mathematically composed, right? Um, and God says, the devil inspire their allies to argue with you. If you obey them, you will be idol worshippers, right? So very clear. If you obey them, you will lose monotheism and you will end up committing uh, the only unforgivable offense. So, we have to be very cautious there. And then verse 120 was dead, and we granted him from God that allows him to navigate through life. Versus a person who's completely lost in the dark, he can never get out of it, no matter what. And and at the same time, their works are adorned in their eyes. They're adorned in their eyes, which is why they cannot get out of it. If they were not adorned in their eyes, then they would see the ugliness of what they were doing and they would stop immediately and they would come out of it. But their works are adorned, meaning they're made to look beautiful and attractive in their own eyes. They think they're doing very good. They think that they are saints. They think because we're not smart, or because we're not smart or clever as we like to think and give ourselves any credit. It all comes from guidance, only comes from God. And if you're not careful, that guidance can be taken away from us. Just as these people who are completely left in the dark after slipping through on their path of submission um, by falling prey to Satan for things like what we just discussed. And God says in verse 123, we allow every community to plot and scheme, but they only plot and scheme again. There's a lot of scheming. I mean, uh, once these people are on this path, I believe like they're naturally devious and crooked, and they scheme. Obviously, because they're following the devil, and this is what the devil does. And they have to plot and scheme because, I mean, what else do they have? Uh, they don't have God's guidance. They don't have any kind of support. So they just plot and scheme these things and try to deceive people, right? And they try to fabricate things and try to come from different angles, like long-winded, explanations of and fancy words to deceive other people. Um, so God, we're going to continue reading verse 124. It says, questioning God's wisdom. When a powerful proof comes to them, they selecting his messengers. Corrupted Muslim scholars have uttered the same utterance regarding the revelation of the Quran's mathematical code through God's messenger of the covenant. Right? So as the footnotes clarifies, there are people that will not accept very because it didn't come from messengers, and God chose some reasons that it becomes very right. And we can see that how difficult it was that even so many of the people that accepted the messenger of the covenant as a messenger while he was alive with them, ended up somehow trailing off the path of for majority of them. I can say that. And For a lot of people now, even even though the messenger is not here, even though the messenger was sent at a different time, they still don't want to accept that because they don't like the idea of someone else being a messenger other than them, right? And they want to get the guidance. They still don't want to accept that because they don't like the idea of someone else being a messenger other than them, right? And they want to get the guidance from God personally. And God says these people, you can be sad for these people. I mean, this is a human tragedy, as it says um, in other verses. Like, people have these egos, and they continue to follow their parents blindly because they think that they are part of some legacy, and the legacy that they carry, and somehow it's that can, so we can, so we can remember that our ego is our enemy. Our ego is what brought us here, and so it's a big achievement um, that someone accepts a messenger, right? Um, but Obviously we have to remember that. So it's a big achievement for all of us that we were able to accept the message firsthand, to adopt it as our path coming from punishment for their transgressions. Verse 130, who narrated to you my revelations and warned you about the meeting of this day. They will say, we bear witness against ourselves. They were totally preoccupied with the worldly life, and they'll bear witness against themselves that they were disbelievers. This is to show that your Lord never annihilates any community unjustly while its people are unaware. So God says He not just randomly redeemed, So the jinn has to be of a similar uh, kind as you in terms of their submission to God. You can't have a believing person with a complete disbelieving devil jinn. That's not how it works. They're paired according to they're matched accordingly. And on the day of judgment, God is telling us that these people will say, I mean, quote, and this is in quotes, because God already knows that the future has already happened. We're living through it as humans, but this has already happened. People are already in hell, and they've already, as far as God is concerned, they've made the statement, and God says they will say that they will bear witness against themselves that they were astray in this world. Like, they will understand everything that they did in this life, in the previous life, in retrospect, when they're in the hereafter, contemplating upon it and looking at everything that they did, they'll know exactly why they're in hell. And they'll say that they'll realize that they were just preoccupied with the worldly life. I mean, they didn't believe in the hereafter, which is why they were preoccupied, right? If they believed in the hereafter, I mean, the hereafter would be their priority, right? Because you believe that if you truly believe in it, and you're going to have to work for it, and you're going to have to prioritize it. But because they didn't believe in it, then they're preoccupied. They thought that everything of this world was everything that mattered, and as long as you can get away with whatever you can get away with in this world, as long as you can get all the materials in this world, that's all that mattered to them. Everything that they could see and touch and hoard, that's what results in your other people. What is promised to you will come to pass, and you can never evade it. So, God is telling us here that, reminding us basically that all of us are going to attain a rank in accordance with what we have done, right? Those ranks are eternal, and there is once we are and work on the deeds that will make you proud and make God happy for you on the day of judgment. And may God allow us to be not be one of those people who just look at their actions and um, just they're proud of themselves, thinking that they're so good and there's no one better than them. Of us is to worship God, grow our souls, uh, do whatever we can, to end up, successful in the hereafter, right? And people that we see, if we see people around us that are doing otherwise, I mean, that's just a red flag for all of us, and we should stay away from such people. Uh, and we should not be obviously we don't want to be influenced by them in any way. So may God allow us, to have the right mindset and the right attitude, um, and have our eyes and ears open to what God really wants from us.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Because my internet was, yeah, just like that last part you said is very true and so important. Last part you said is very true and so important. Me and Brother Raphael were listening to something yesterday from the messenger, and he about uh, the last thing you closed with.
Right, so anyone has any comments or questions? Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I think the points that you touched on about it should be very easy for people, and it really surprises me, that it isn't. Like these verses, just like the Quran says, these verses are very straightforward, and the book is elucidated. The Quran says these verses are very straightforward, and the book is elucidated. So, for example, the ones that we just read about how the Quran is fully detailed, nothing's left out of it. But I guess I don't know why, but people must overlook these verses or something. Or they, I was thinking they probably don't actually believe in the Quran either, believe it in things like circumcision, other verses, or uh,
Yeah, because as it says, believing in any other source besides Quran reflects disbelief in the Quran. So
mhm.
you can choose certain verses to believe in and certain things to circumvent, because you know they're accustomed to it, so they want.
but what the messenger said is true. I guess if you think about it. But like, why would you want to go to a book that's has all these, uh, human injected errors and nonsense? And when God gives you something that's full in details, and you can follow it to the T, and don't have to worry about, messing up or going astray.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, I think it's, they want to validate their opinions and or something. Yeah, mashallah.
Yeah, I mean,
Also, they lose. Yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
They lose their submission too. Like like they're calling themselves submitters, but they're doing everything like the Mohammedans and the Christians do. So they lose their submission, to God alone
Yeah, the thing is that
when they do this.
Satan is not going to leave someone alone when they come into submission. I mean, yeah, you've discovered submission, but that's where, like, and I remember saying it to other people that are not here anymore. But I mean, that's where your submission starts. That's where the real challenge starts. Because now
Mhm.
you're really, uh, you know, you've really become like the main target of Satan. You've really come in the spotlight for Satan. So now, I mean, that's when the real challenge starts. For
That's true, brother.
before coming to submission, like, uh, really, it's not difficult. When people come into submission, they think. I mean, and I'm speaking for, I guess, everybody. Speaking for myself. But yeah. So, speaking for myself, I mean, it feels like when you become a submitter, because you're comparing yourself against the rest of the world. It feels like you have, you know, conquered the ultimate battle, right? But that's just a start. I mean, you have just entered, right? I mean, it's let's say, like, consider like a prestigious university like Harvard, right? I mean, someone who comes into Harvard and gets admitted now thinks that uh, he has achieved the ultimate, right? Is eventually destined for disaster, because no, that's where all the hard work begins now. So you get into a university, that's where, yeah, it's good that you made it to university, but that's just the start. Now you have to work hard. Now you have to have challenges. You have to have tests. You know, you have to go through all these things. You know, a lot of the courses in a lot of universities are designed to, weed out the people, who are not fit, right? And distinguish those who obviously are built for it in some way, working hard enough to achieve that, right? It's what makes a person successful. So before that, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just playing games, I would say, right? to Especially, I mean, like when it comes to Satan, right? Because you're like doing all kinds of evil things. I mean, Satan doesn't care, because he's already got most of these people anyways, so he's not really paying a lot of attention, like, personally, to you. But once you become a submitter, like, I believe, like, he personally knows you. He's personally looking at you. I mean, his agents are, watching you. Your everyday, like, Satan studies his subjects, right? And so when God says that Satan is your most ardent enemy, I mean, we have to take it for what God says, right? He is your most ardent enemy. I mean, you can't just underestimate your enemy and think, yeah, you're just gonna, yeah, I'm gonna follow the Quran, I'm gonna do my salat, and just everything else that I feel is correct. that's not that's not obviously how it works. I mean, we have to stick to the Quran, and we have to be hard on ourselves. We have to be hard on our ego, our personal opinions, our biases, and submit. And if it was that easy, obviously everyone would be in heaven. But we know that's not going to be the case.
MashaAllah, brother. That's true. MashaAllah. Yeah, you know what like keeps me I guess like uh I remember we were having a Quran study a couple of years ago. I think it was you we were talking about it, but like we have to shoot for like the A, you know, or making God our God like 99 to 100% of the day. Like that's what we have to actually try and like you said, be very, very hard on ourselves. Because what we're risking now that we have the message, you know, like we could either go to the high heaven or maybe even the low heaven, God willing, um, like and escape hell. In both scenarios, or we're going to be in the worst retribution forever. You know, so like thinking about this and like in each decision, like you know, like it's yeah, it's very extremely scary and like to think like you know, like if we don't get it right, if we don't kill our egos, if we don't uh like be purified and you know make it, you know like these this is how these people should think, you know, then they would like be like, oh my gosh, what if I'm like circumcision, like wow, it's starting to make sense, you know, then they would run, they wouldn't come touch it with a 10-foot pole, like they would, and then they would, you know, implore for forgiveness and advocate the truth, you know? I mean, because you know, if you really think about it, if these people really pray to God, like if you know you come to them with this information, it's very straightforward. Like, I mean, just right here in the Quran, upholding any other source besides Quran reflected. If they really prayed and were like actually concerned, like, man, what if I have this wrong?
Mm.
And, and then they really pray God, you know, He would guide them.
Right.
And like He would, you know, so
Yeah, exactly. If it was
uh,
really that important for them to be critical of themselves, they would be critical of themselves and choose the right. God will allow them to choose the right thing, right? And this is why this is why it's important for us to be critical of these things. Why God tells us, right? Mashallah, and thank God for showing us these very basic laws. This is because this is the fundamental understanding and submission
uh,
that we learn that, like, especially for me, coming from like a Sunni background, I understood that this was the main difference between me and a so-called Muslim, is they uphold other sources besides the Quran, and what that was like, and I understood that, okay, now that I become a submitter, this means that I cannot follow any other uh, teaching, and what it means to be a submitter is to follow Quran alone, worship God alone, right? And I think, like, when I saw what I saw, like, with people later on, like, as I got involved with other people in other communities that were submitters, um, uh, with their parents and things like that, like, they they were kind of so comfortable in their submission, in their ways, that they just started to not even discuss, like, this thing, like, they would, like, really, I personally don't remember them really talking about those things. Um, like I was confused about this for some time after I, became a submitter. Like, I read the book Quran, Hadith, and Islam, and it left a very strong impression on me, which is what allowed me to become a submitter. As I was in these studies for many years, like, these things were not being discussed. Quran alone and what that meant. And for me, just, I think, like, when the subject of circumcision came up, is when all of that just kind of started kind of coming back to me. Like, I was like, wait a minute, this is what the messenger says, this is what the Quran says, And this is what the messenger stressed on so many times, and especially on the practices, because if you look at the book Quran, Hadith, and Islam, the messenger of the covenant like mentions that part over and over again, like practices given to Abraham with this and this, because he's stressing on the fact that this is all that is to be considered as laws and practices are parts of our religion, um, not these other things that they have invented. And just it's amazing how Satan has duped so many people to not be aware of that for some reason anymore. Like they don't pay attention. Like they're aware of, okay, the messenger said this in this audio, and he said this in this audio, and at this minute he said this. I mean, they have this much information about so many other things, but like there's this book called Quran, Hadith, and Islam, but you never hear any one of them ever quote anything from there, or when he's talking about Quran alone, they're talking about other things, you know. So, anyways, any other comments or questions?
I was just gonna add to it. Yeah, you made a good. I was just trying to think of the comment I was about.
About the meaning of zeros?
No, no, it was a, in the verse,
Uh-huh.
uh, the verse we read.
I don't know if it's my connection, but I think it is
I think
yours.
too, yeah, like these people, almost the author. Oh, can you hear better? Yeah, I think you're good now, brother.
Yeah, yeah.
A little better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, it's almost like it's the obvious, the things that they overlook or they're so sure about or confident. You know how like the old story, the hare versus the tortoise when it's running and the hare is like so confident and stuff. It's kind of like as submitters, the whole basis, kind of like the meat and potatoes of submission. I guess they feel comfortable, as you were saying, in their submission in this regard and let their guard down. And that maybe where Satan tries to enter. And I mean, he won't stop either. I mean, if he doesn't get people through there, he'll try other ways, you know. Um, but I did have a question. 129, we thus match the wicked to be companions of each other as a punishment for the transgressions. So that's referring to the jinns and the humans, huh? Not like Donald Trump and Putin. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. I mean, the thing is, it's both, right? I mean,
But
the humans, God says the wicked people in this world, they're
mhm,
companions.
that does make a lot of sense. Oh yeah, and the comment I think you made, this is what I wanted to say about the message in verse 124. God knows exactly who is best qualified to deliver his message. And how the powerful proof comes, and they won't believe unless they're given what's given to God's messengers. Yeah, instead of, like you said, instead of being appreciative for the message, uh, it's totally backwards how they want to be on the receiving end themselves or be messengers themselves. But I think this shows their ignorance. It's ego for sure, arrogance augmented by ignorance, because it's the same exact like parallel or concept that got us sent here. Like we all thought the test would be easy. Like these people don't realize, like being a message, I mean, the test. I don't want to give myself a test. So I'm not even. But I ask for a. These people are so confident they would be successful as a messenger, and the messenger himself said, just because you're a messenger, it doesn't guarantee paradise. But of course, like God's messengers are godly servants and all that. Um, but like these people, I think, are like exhibiting the same traits. Like they're so sure they're passed the test as a messengership,
Mm-hmm.
and that's exactly probably why they weren't chosen.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, and
and for them to think,
imagine like some of them are
yeah, like, huh?
sorry, go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was saying, imagine that some of them are so jealous, like even that they themselves they declare them, um, right? Like looking at, for example, his son Sam. I mean, how he declared himself as a messenger, being someone
Oh, I
like,
forgot that.
you know, and yeah, I mean, the ego is such an enemy. Like in this case, like you decide to go against him, you decide to um, submit yourself to the command of Satan, and you think that you're safeguarding your like you're a vanguard of submission by going against the messenger and going against the message, going against the um, um, you know propagation of the Quran message, going against the um, um, you know propagation of the Quran. And you to know the correct.
Huh?
Well, from what I understand, there's only one person that follows him, but one person stupid enough to follow him,
Yeah.
or I'd say crazy enough. but but the thing is, like, what surprises me is how um, the people like you know the masjid, the Tucson, like how they allow this person to give sermons. They allow them to speak him to speak in a conference. Allow him to lead the prayers. I mean, because of this, like they don't allow me. Imagine they told me that I cannot come to their mosque for after the conference. They said if you come, it's private property. Said we're going to call the cops. And this person who's um,
Imagine how
a
evil, you know?
messenger of Satan, and claims to be a messenger and says all these lies and wants money. I mean, obviously he's leading the prayer and he's doing all these things. So it's good that I'm not I'm told that I'm not allowed. But I mean, it just shows how evil these people are, that they would accept such a person, knowing how evil this person is, that they'll even work together with this person. It's just beyond me.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
like,
brother, like you said, exposes how evil they are, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
not
it
that they're
doesn't make
stupid
any sense.
why they're doing that. I mean, I already know that they're just as bad.
Right.
Sorry, brother, what were you gonna say?
Doesn't like how do they? What are they actually thinking? Like if they're gonna like for example, like if you have a friend over and then uh um another friend like hates this person, or somebody's talking bad about him, and like why are you still gonna what are you doing? Like what are you like what's wrong? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like it's almost like it doesn't it's like reading a book you secretly hate, but like okay, so why are you even reading the book in the first place? Why are you like
Mm-hmm.
speaking so highly about the author, but then a person, we know God's the author of the Quran, but like, just an example. And but a person who undermines, insults, criticizes the author or the translator, you're gonna like accept them. Like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah, I mean
why are you wasting your time? Like, it doesn't make any sense with these people, and not just Tucson, like these other people,
mm-hmm.
who follow the sources.
Yeah, because
You know,
Satan has to make them believe that they're still following it.
Yeah, but like, don't they ask themselves like can't don't they? I guess maybe like I don't want to be talking in vain here, like or asking redundant questions, but it's like wouldn't they like ask themselves, or wouldn't it become apparent, like why like are they lying to themselves? You know,
Yeah, they're lying to
like
themselves.
I
Yeah,
mean,
they're duped. Like Satan hypnotizes them. You know, it's like they're totally like blind. It's like Satan. You know.
yeah, I think what you had Brother Raphael said they're hypnotized. That's what that's the answer. You had said that too because I had the same question with Christians a while back, and I think it's even in the Quran. Uh, yeah, and you had mentioned how because I really didn't understand, like I mentioned how Satan hypnotizes his constituents. Yeah, I mean, like that's why people shouldn't underestimate him and seek refuge in God uh, to be helped.
Yeah, I mean, I used to tell people, in the past, like who I was talking to that come new into submission, like be careful, like everything that glitters is not gold, and they see, oh, like so and so is such a good submitter, and so is such a good brother, and I mean, yeah, I like to think everybody's good, but we have to understand that, the way it works. I mean, there's a reason why when you read in the Quran, like at the very onset of, you just starting the book, like God's talking about the hypocrites, like in Surah 2, right after the Al Fatiha, a few verses into it, like there are hypocrites. And I mean, if it wasn't important for us to be aware of that, obviously God would not have mentioned it. But it's so important, like we see all these people, and I mean, this is something that was very hard for me in the beginning, also in submission to understand. Like, I mean, I come from a place where there's no submitter, and now I see like communities of people, and it was really hard for me to understand like what was wrong with it, like because like everywhere I looked, I see these people, and I see like hypocrisy, and I start like because like everywhere I looked, I see these people, and I see like hypocrisy, and I start like questioning myself, like, am I a hypocrite, or are these people hypocrites? Like,
Why would you not want to like be improved? Why would you not better, so you can grow more, grow your soul and stuff? Kind of like when you go like to company training or something. If you pass this course or these classes, you get a new certification, which you can use to uh, make more money. They'll pay you more. I mean, it's the same kind of concept, but it's not easy. But yeah, but you learn in the process, and become better workers, better employees.
yeah, you know what it is? It's like, let's say, there is a popular brand, right? That's you come to find out that it's the best, you know, and then you go shopping, and then someone sells you a counterfeit, and then you look at it, like, oh, okay, I found the Nikes, you just end up with a counterfeit, and I think this is what these people are in submission, like in this case, right? It's bad. I mean, you come from one sect of idol worship, and then you just go into another, right? I mean, you're not, obviously Satan is making sure that, even though you came this far and you found God alone, that still he's going to try to come to you within this path of worshiping God alone, and try to lead you astray and get you to the lowest pit of hell. And within this path of worshiping God alone, and try to lead you astray and get you to the lowest pit of hell. And so we can, I mean, this to me, it really just shows to us that how difficult it is, make it to heaven, um, even though there are people that are on the path, and how they're led to believe, content with their ways, and yet I believe that they're going to be surprised in the hereafter.
Yeah, very true. Mashallah, that's we're very fortunate. I feel fortunate to be here. You know, there's one thing too. Like as I've learned and gotten help a lot from you. Like I think of the verse. Like I thought about it. Years ago. Like we thus test you by one another. Like for example, like when I wasn't. Uh, I noticed I still had ego. Like when I was doing contact prayers in public, like very public. I know I've talked about this before, but like in airports, very busy. And then you had made it out. Me and Raphael, mashallah, we just talked about it, but you had made it out that it's like no big deal. I'm like, God helps us. Like works on our defects. There's several other things too. But like, I feel like with other, I don't know if it's just here, mashallah, but it's a blessing because it's, yeah, based on what I've heard and just what I've seen, either at all these other places that have fallen one way or another into these innovations, they don't take things seriously. Like they don't, like, you know, uh, I guess kind of like you were saying earlier, like, you have to take your submission to God alone very seriously. You know, like your eternal hereafter depends on it. Uh, look into the nitty gritty details. As far as like making sure you're doing good and not following majority and all that. Um, but yeah, that's too. That's self evident proofs. For me, I'm sure it's for others as well who are still here. Uh, that, yeah, it's a blessing.
Yeah, I never. In the past, like I never. I don't think I ever gave like a sermon in public. I know one time you gave a sermon before when you guys were taking me to the airport. when
Hmm.
we gave one,
Oh yeah,
when we gave one in Thailand, there's people walking past us.
yeah,
Yeah.
MashaAllah. That was a
yeah.
good sermon too.
No, but no, you've given them before like 20, 30, 40 people before. I've seen them on YouTube. That's very very.
In public, in a public place, you know.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Like it was such a big deal. I even remember too, brother. Like I was telling Raphael, I think Raphael. You remember I was telling you like not this past week I was in, but the week before. You had This was like 2023. And you were I think that made but like looking back, it's like we don't. Uh, well, I don't care, what type of response. If people are allergic to the Quran because they're Christians or people I grew up with, that's too bad for them. Um, like if they deserve to be allergic, they're allergic. And now it's a blessing, but like you have to have those type of people in your corner. And really, it's God helping us as submitters and believers, growing and purifying us. And everybody's different. I'm sure. Like some things uh, people may be better. Like some things uh, people may be better. The messenger said these things too. Like we have to. Like, are you idol worshiping? You're idol worshiping. I'm idol worshiping. We have to. Like I like how he. We have to help each other. These Quran studies. Friday sermons, all these time. We're just talking and stuff are very beneficial.
MashaAllah, brother. Brother Suleman, like you were talking about earlier, like you were talking about, how we and Brother John as well, like we have to be hard on ourselves. And you was talking about how you see it, happened um, through past generations, you know, and history repeats itself. Like you have to understand, like Satan is the believer's ardent enemy. You know, we have to take him like as we have to see him as such. You know, because like and really be on our guard because look at what he has done to like all these religions came with some like you just like you were talking you were explaining they all came with submission to God alone, you know, and through time he was able to um corrupt it and you know and do all these bad things, you know. So like it tells us that we must um see him as such, you know, and be on our guard and always seek refuge in God, of course.
Also,
Is there any other comments or questions? Inshallah. All right. So if there are no other comments or questions, God willing, we can conclude our study. So